So imagine you commit a crime, you get caught, and you find yourself standing before a judge.
Right, the classic courtroom scenario.
Yeah, exactly. And you brace yourself for the sentencing, but the judge doesn't just forgive you. He completely expunges your record, he pays your fines out of his own pocket, and legally declares that the crime, like, never happened in the first place.
Which is pretty much unheard of.
Right. Because in the secular world, I mean, that level of institutional amnesia is just impossible. We all leave a permanent digital footprint, a credit score, a permanent record.
Oh, absolutely. Everything is tracked.
But on April 12, 2026, the Catholic Church claims to offer exactly that kind of total erasure for your soul.
Yeah, the theological term for it is a plenary-indulgence.
Mm-hmm.
And it is the central promise attached to Divine Mercy Sunday.
Which is what we're looking at today.
Right. The claim here is that a person can return to absolute spiritual zero. Like no lingering baggage, no deferred penalties. It's really the ultimate paradigm shift in how we understand the consequences of our own actions.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because a feast day making that kind of absolute sweeping guarantee, it sounds like something codified at the Council of Trent or, woven into the very early days of the church.
I think so, yeah.
But when you actually look at the source material, the origins of this specific global feast are surprisingly modern.
They really are. The timeline is fascinating because we are actually looking at the 1930s.
That recent, huh?
Yeah. To understand the sheer scale of what happens this coming Sunday, we have to look at the unlikely architect of the devotion, St. Maria Faustina Kowalska.
A Polish nun, right.
Exactly. She was a Polish nun whose daily reality was about as far removed from high-level Vatican theology as you can possibly get. I mean, she worked primarily as a cook, a gardener, and a porter.
The juxtaposition there is just striking to me.
Oh, it's wild.
You have this woman performing the most mundane, invisible labor imaginable, literally peeling potatoes and, answering the front door.
Right, the lowest tasks in the convent.
But simultaneously, she reports experiencing these intense, profound, mystical visions of Jesus between, 1931 and 1938?
Yeah, that exact window. She was navigating two entirely different realities at the same time.
It's hard to even wrap your head around.
It really is. In these visions, she reported that Jesus dictated specific praise to her, requested an image to be painted, and explicitly asked for the Sunday after Easter to be established as a Feast of Mercy.
And she's just writing all of this down.
Meticulously. She recorded all of it in private journals, which eventually amounted to a 700-page diary. And she was writing this while battling tuberculosis, by the way.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, she ultimately died of the disease in 1938 at just 33 years old.
Which, usually that's where the historical footnote ends, a hidden mystic writes a private journal and passes away.
Right, story over.
But her writings eventually triggered this massive institutional reflex. Because in 1959, the highest authorities in the church completely shut the devotion down.
They really did. They hit the brakes hard.
They placed her diary on the index of forbidden books. I mean, imagine producing a deeply personal 700-page journal, the literal core of your life's work, only for it to be suppressed by your own authorities.
Because of a typo.
Yes, because of a typo. It wasn't actually heresy that got her banned. It was a translation error.
The mechanics of that ban are just a perfect example of institutional friction.
How so?
Well, Polish is a language with highly specific linguistic nuances, right? Especially when you're describing internal mystical states.
Right, it doesn't always translate perfectly one-to-one.
Exactly. When Faustina's subjective spiritual poetry was hastily translated into Italian, it basically lost all of its nuance.
It just got flattened out.
Completely flattened. So the doctrinal offices in Rome, reading this poor Italian translation, it sounded like this rogue nun was making literal dogmatic claims that contradicted established theology.
Oh, I see. They assumed she was elevating her own private revelations above church teaching.
Right. So the Vatican acted to protect the integrity of dogma and, like we said, shut it down. The devotion was frozen in time for 20 years.
Which means it requires an insider to thaw it out.
Precisely.
Someone who actually understands both the linguistic nuance of the original Polish and the rigorous demands of Roman theology.
And Archbishop Karol Wojtyla of Krakow steps into that exact gap.
The perfect guy for the job.
He really was. He understood the culture, he obviously read the original Polish, and he recognized the profound Orthodox truth beneath all that mystical language.
So he gets the ball rolling again.
Yeah, he initiated the formal process of having the diary retranslated, but this time with actual theological precision.
And once Rome examined the corrected manuscript,
The perceived heresies just vanished. The ban was officially lifted in 1978.
and the historical symmetry here is just hard to ignore.
Oh, it gives you chills.
Because mere months after lifting that ban, Archbishop Wojtyla becomes Pope John Paul II.
Right. The timeline is incredible.
He doesn't just casually endorse Faustina's writings either. He elevates them to the highest level of the Universal Church.
She championing it entirely.
Yeah, he beatifies her in 1993, and then on April 30, 2000, he canonizes her and officially establishes Divine Mercy Sunday.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, looking at the sociological context of his papacy, this wasn't merely an administrative act for him.
It's personal.
Deeply personal. Karol Wojtyla lived his formative years under the brutal, crushing weight of both the Nazi occupation of Poland and then the subsequent Soviet communist regime.
Right, two of the most oppressive systems in modern history.
Exactly. And totalitarian systems operate entirely on the mechanics of a permanent record. They run on guilt, fear, surveillance, and just the complete absence of grace.
Wow, that's a really stark contrast to the message of mercy.
It is. John Paul II saw a post-World War II humanity that was just deeply traumatized by its own capacity for evil.
So for him, elevating a message of infinite mercy wasn't just like a nice spiritual theme for a Sunday.
No, not at all.
It was the necessary antidote to the horrors of the 20th century.
Precisely. And that conviction became even more intensely personal for him. I mean, he survived an assassination attempt in St. Peter's Square on May 13, 1981.
Which is wild in itself.
And he credited his survival entirely to divine intervention. After that, his dedication to the message of mercy really became the defining arc of his papacy.
It's almost as if his entire life was marching toward that specific narrative conclusion.
It really feels that way.
Because he actually passed away on the Vigil of Divine Mercy Sunday in 2005.
He did.
And his last public words were prepared for that specific feast day. The text read, let me pull it up, "To humanity, which at times seems to be lost and dominated by the power of evil, selfishness, and fear, the risen Lord offers as a gift his love that forgives, reconciles, and reopens the heart to hope."
He literally spent his final breath delivering that exact message to the world.
It's incredibly powerful. But John Paul II didn't just leave us with a profound quote and a new date on the calendar.
No, he did not.
He attached a massive, tangible spiritual reward to the day. Which brings us back to the mechanics of that clean slate we talked about at the beginning.
Right. The church formally attached a plenary indulgence to Divine Mercy Sunday.
So how does that actually work? Because the claim sounds huge.
It is huge. To really grasp the magnitude of that decree, we need to separate the concepts of guilt and temporal punishment in Catholic theology.
Okay, lay it out for me.
Well, when a person sins, two things happen. First, there is the guilt, which is the rupture of the relationship with God.
Right.
Second, there's the temporal punishment. And that is the actual spiritual damage that the sin inflicts on the individual soul and on the wider community.
Let me try a secular analogy here just to make sure I'm following.
Go for it.
If I borrow your car, drive recklessly, and crash it into a brick wall, I can come to you and beg for forgiveness.
And hopefully I forgive you.
Right. If you forgive me, the relationship is restored. The guilt is gone. But there is still a totaled car sitting in your driveway. The temporal punishment is the grueling work, the cost, and the time required to repair the physical damage I caused.
The total car analogy gets you halfway there, definitely.
Only halfway.
Well, yeah, because in theology, that wreckage is the lingering distortion in your own soul.
Ah, okay.
It's the bad habits you've formed, the residual selfishness, the attachments to things that just aren't God.
So the damage is internal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Normally, repairing that wreckage happens over time. You do it through penance, acts of charity, prayer in this life, or, purification in purgatory in the next.
It's a process.
Right. But a plenary indulgence is the complete instantaneous clearing away of all that wreckage. The temporal punishment is entirely wiped out.
Boom. Gone.
Gone.
So Jesus tells Faustina that on this specific Sunday, the soul that will go to confession and receive Holy Communion shall obtain complete forgiveness of sins and punishment. It's the ultimate reset button.
It really is.
However, looking at the actual decree from the Apostolic Penitentiary, there are specific non-negotiable conditions. You can't just passively exist on Sunday and claim the reward.
No, you definitely can't. The decree mandates active participation.
What are the steps?
There are 4 primary conditions. First, sacramental confession, though the Church grants a pretty wide window for this, roughly 20 days before or after the feast.
Good to know.
Second, receiving Holy Communion on Divine Mercy Sunday itself.
Okay, makes sense.
Third, praying for the intentions of the Pope. And fourth, taking part in the prayers held in honor of Divine Mercy in a church or chapel, or at least reciting the Our Father and the Creed before the Divine Mercy image.
Okay, so that's the baseline. And the sources do note that there are compassionate exceptions built into the decree, right?
Yes, absolutely.
If a person is sick, elderly, or completely homebound, they can still obtain the indulgence by reciting the prayers before an image of Divine Mercy with complete trust and then fulfilling those sacramental conditions as soon as they physically can.
Right, the Church isn't trying to punish people for being ill.
Right. But I have to push back on a specific line in this decree because there is a clause that honestly sounds like an impossible catch.
You're looking at the detachment requirement.
Yes. The decree states that to obtain the plenary indulgence, the individual must be completely detached from the inclination to any sin, even venial sin.
It's a heavy line.
Honestly, is that even practically achievable? I mean, I understand striving for goodness, but being completely detached from the inclination to any minor flaw.
It sounds daunting.
It sounds like demanding someone have 0 microscopic germs on their hands while living in the real world. You can scrub your hands all day, but the second you touch a doorknob, the germs are back.
That's a great way to put it.
So how can the Church offer this universal clean slate, but then hide it behind a requirement of absolute perfection?
Well, the germ analogy highlights the exact philosophical trap most people fall into when reading that decree.
Okay, correct my thinking here.
If the Church viewed detachment as a permanent, unbreakable guarantee of flawless future behavior, then you are entirely correct. No human being could ever obtain the indulgence.
Right, we'd all fail immediately.
Exactly. But Thomistic theology views detachment as a matter of the will, not a prophecy of future perfection.
So it's about the orientation of my mind in that exact moment, rather than like a magical spell that prevents me from ever being impatient in traffic again.
Exactly that.
Okay.
It is a sincere, radical intentionality in the present moment.
Okay.
When you are standing there receiving communion, you are making a conscious decision saying, Lord, I renounce all of it. You aren't secretly keeping a pet vice in your back pocket.
Right. You weren't saying, I'm giving up everything except this one little habit I really enjoy.
Exactly. If your will is sincerely and entirely resolved against sin in that exact second, the condition is met. The Church understands human frailty. You know, it knows you might stumble the very next day.
Yeah.
The detachment clause is just about ensuring the soul isn't holding the door open for sin while simultaneously asking God for a clean slate.
That distinction changes everything. It makes the requirement incredibly rigorous, sure, but completely accessible.
It's about radical honesty, not flawless execution.
Right. And because the spiritual payoff of this day is so immense, the Church doesn't treat it as just a standalone 24-hour event.
No, there's a very deliberate psychological and spiritual runway leading up to it.
Right. The preparation actually requires a 9-day runway. Because in Faustina's diary, Jesus dictated a specific novena that begins every year on Good Friday and concludes on the Saturday immediately preceding Divine Mercy Sunday.
And that timing is crucial.
Which is a vital logistical detail for you listening right now, because today is Monday, April 6, 2026.
Right, so we were in the middle of it.
That puts us squarely on day 4 of the novena. And what really stands out in the diary is how methodically this novena expands the circle of mercy.
It's really beautiful.
You aren't just praying for your own spiritual housekeeping. Day 4, for example, is specifically dedicated to those who do not believe and do not know Jesus.
The architecture of the novena is brilliantly expansive. Over the 9 days, the individual is asked to pray for literally all of humanity.
It covers everyone.
It does. You pray for priests, for devout souls, for separated brethren, for meek and humble souls, for souls in purgatory, and finally for souls who have become lukewarm.
You are systematically bringing the entire spectrum of the human condition to the altar.
Exactly. You focus on that daily intention, and then you pray the Divine Mercy Chaplet, which is the central prayer of the devotion.
Right, and the chaplet is recited on standard rosary beads. It's actually quite brief, maybe 7 to 10 minutes to get through it.
It's very manageable.
But the preparation isn't just about streaming those 9 days together. There's also this daily micro-practice. The diary introduces the 3.000 p.m. hour of mercy.
Yes. The 3 o'clock hour represents the exact moment Jesus died on the cross. In her visions, Faustina recorded Jesus asking her to honor this specific hour every single day. The instruction was, At 3 o'clock, implore my mercy, especially for sinners, and if only for a brief moment, immerse yourself in my passion.
The psychological impact of that is just fascinating to me.
How so?
Well, religion often feels heavily siloed. You have your Sunday morning church time, and then you have your Monday through Friday secular work time.
They rarely mix.
Right. But asking someone to pause at 3 p.m. on a random Tuesday interrupts that secular rhythm. It functions almost like a spiritual Pomodoro technique.
Oh, I like that. It shatters the artificial wall between the sacred and the mundane.
Right. You're at your desk, you're deep in some massive Excel spreadsheet, you're hitting that afternoon slump.
We've all been there.
Exactly. And setting a daily 3 p.m. alarm forces a cognitive break. You don't have to drop to your knees in the break room or anything.
Please don't.
Yeah, the sources note that many people just stop typing for like 5 seconds. They take a breath and mentally say, Jesus, I trust in you.
It's so simple.
It weaves the mystical directly into the mundane reality of modern life.
It really democratizes the devotion. That 3 p.m. alarm makes the heights of mystical theology completely accessible to, a busy parent, an exhausted college student, or someone working a factory shift.
You are syncing your biological daily clock with the concept of ultimate mercy.
That's a great way to summarize it.
So the preparation is done, the novenas have been prayed, the 3 p.m. alarms have triggered those daily mental resets all week. Logistically, how does a person actually celebrate the feast itself this Sunday, April 12th?
Well, visually, the focal point of the day is the Divine Mercy image.
The painting she requested.
Yes, the specific painting requested in the diary. It portrays Jesus stepping forward, raising one hand in blessing, and pointing to his heart.
And there are the rays of light, right?
Exactly. From the heart, two distinct rays of light stream outward. One is red, signifying the blood of the Eucharist, and one is pale or white, signifying the waters of baptism and justification.
But the most critical element of the image isn't actually the artistic rendering itself, is it?
No, it's the text.
Right. It's the required inscription at the bottom. Jesus, I trust in you.
Without that inscription, the image is considered incomplete. Now, if you attend a parish celebration on Sunday, that image will be prominently displayed for veneration.
What does the schedule usually look like at a parish?
The typical parish schedule involves adoration of the Blessed Sacrament beginning around 2:00 p.m.
Okay.
Then, culminating exactly at that 3:00 p.m. hour of mercy we just talked about, the congregation prays the chaplet together, followed by benediction.
And confession is usually available.
Crucially, yes. Priests are stationed in the confessionals throughout the afternoon to help people fulfill that sacramental condition for the indulgence.
But we also have to acknowledge the practical reality here, which is that not everyone can spend their entire Sunday afternoon at a parish.
Absolutely. Life happens.
Logistics, illness, kids, or work schedules get in the way. The sources emphasize that the celebration can absolutely happen at home. You can display the image in your living room, pray the chaplet at 3:00 p.m., and make that conscious internal act of trust.
It counts just as much.
And just as a practical resource for you listening, if you want to jump right into the novena today on day 4, or if you need someone to lead you through the chaplet this Sunday, you can use Ave Audio.
Oh, they are fantastic for that.
Yeah, they have guided versions of all the Divine Mercy prayers ready to stream, which is incredibly helpful if you don't want to get bogged down trying to remember, which prayer goes on which bead.
Right, because following an audio guide allows the intellect to rest, so the will can actually focus on that detachment and intention we discussed earlier.
It takes the pressure off. So zooming all the way out here, we've traced the history from an invisible Polish nun in the 1930s through bureaucratic friction of the Vatican Index to an assassinated pope, right up to a 3 p.m. phone alarm ringing in an office building today.
It's quite a journey.
It really is. So why does this specific message, this exact feast, resonate so deeply, particularly with people who might not have set foot inside a church in a decade?
Because it bypasses the performative aspects of religion and speaks directly to the heaviest burden of the human condition.
Which is?
Shame. We all carry the weight of our own permanent records.
Yeah.
We all have wreckage we cannot fix on our own.
The totaled cars in the driveway.
Exactly. Divine Mercy Sunday addresses the desperate, universal desire to know that we are not permanently defined by our worst moments.
That's a powerful thought.
It offers a mechanism for absolute restoration that doesn't require the individual to first prove their own holiness.
It fundamentally flips the script.
It does.
It's the posture of a child approaching a parent when they've broken something valuable in the house.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
The child doesn't draft like a 10-point financial restitution plan. They just approach with empty hands, trusting that the parent loves them more than the parent cares about the broken object.
That is the exact essence of Jesus, I trust in you.
It really is.
It requires the humility to be empty-handed.
Yeah.
You are explicitly trusting the vastness of divine mercy more than you are trusting the severity of your own failures.
The humility to be empty-handed. Man, that is the perfect synthesis of this entire deep dive.
It sums it up perfectly.
We are approaching a Sunday that offers the ultimate spiritual clean slate, a genuine chance to have that temporal wreckage completely cleared away.
A true reset.
And to think, the entire global movement hinges on the quiet obedience of St. Faustina, a 33-year-old gardener whose private diary survived mistranslation and suppression to eventually spark a worldwide phenomenon.
Her life is an absolute masterclass in the unseen mechanics of grace.
It really makes you evaluate the hidden aspects of your own life. I want to leave you, our listener, with the final thought to mull over as you navigate the rest of your week.
Let's hear it.
You might feel like your current daily routine is the equivalent of peeling potatoes in a Polish convent. Unseen, mundane, utterly devoid of historical significance.
A lot of days feel like that.
They do. But Faustina's private acts of trust, written in total secret, ended up reshaping the spiritual landscape of the 21st century. It really makes you wonder, what quiet, unnoticed actions or private decisions of integrity in your life right now are quietly building a ripple effect that will outlast you?
You never know what your faithfulness is setting into motion.
A vital perspective to maintain. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Whether you're firing up Ave audio for day 4 of the novena today, setting a daily 3 p.m. alarm, or simply trying to figure out what to do with the broken glass in your own life, we hope you approach this week with a bit of that clean slate mentality. Take care, and we'll see you next time.